What's up, fellas? I'm your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMA LOTN. We are back for the fourth edition of the MMA DFS show on my guy Sal Vetri's channel. Shout out to all the fellas that have been showing your boy nothing but support since I've jumped onto this channel. It's been great. I love the feedback, and I can't wait to keep this thing growing on a week-to-week, fight week-to-week basis as well, too. So quickly, right off the bat, I just want to plug myself. Once again, you guys can find me at MMALOTN on Twitter, MMALOTN on the IG as well. And if you want to check out my own YouTube channel, you guys can just search up MMALOTN and it'll be the first thing that pops up. I also want to plug in my own Patreon, $5 a month. You guys get a ton of value. It's pretty much MMA betting focused. All the DFS stuff, once again, is always going to drop on my guy Sal's channel here. But in terms of specifically betting wise, you guys get access to my picks, early access to my breakdowns, a live Discord channel, a best bets and props article that I drop and that go through every single fight on the card, give you the best bet and the best prop. Very informative article. A lot of people love that one. And then we have over 220 members right now. So for $5 a month, yeah, you get a lot of bang for your buck for sure. All the links are in the description below, so make sure you guys check that out. And that's the best way to support your boy. Also, we want to give a quick shout out to Monkey Knife Fight, the sponsor for the show. It is a player prop site where you pretty much pick an over-under on fantasy points or significant strikes landed. That's specific for the UFC, obviously, but they obviously cover all these other sports, NHL, basketball, hockey. Well, that's kind of redundant saying NHL and hockey, but you guys know what I mean. Very fun site. They give you a free money bonus, 100% match all the way up to $50 on your initial deposit if you use the promo code UFC50. That's UFC50. Make sure you guys plug that in when you guys sign up. It will be a great way to support the show, and it's also a great fantasy sports site as well too. A great spin on the fantasy sports type of approach to gambling. So check that out. Shout out to Monkey Knife Fight for always supporting the show. All right. So before we get into the actual show here, I want to let you guys know that we're going to be taking a little bit of a different approach with the shows moving forward. So I don't want to spend as much time going through the entire card. If you guys want to, get an in-depth look at the entire card, you guys can check out my own podcast. Once again, the link is in the description below for my YouTube channel, where I usually drop my own podcast Mondays of fight week. If you want the rundown on the entire card, again, check my podcast out. For these shows now moving forward, I want to hone in specifically on the lock of the night plays, the dog of the night plays, the fade of the night, the sleeper of the night. Like I want to focus specifically on those fights. So it won't be as long of an episode. You know what I mean? We used to hit the hour mark, hour and 5, hour and 10 mark. That won't be happening anymore. We're going to keep it a little bit shorter, maybe 25 to 35 minutes, depending on how long it takes me to get through these matchups. But the 4 or 5 matchups that I go through, I'll go through as well as I can to give you guys as much information as possible to make the best decision possible for your DraftKings needs. But in case you guys have more questions, you guys are more than welcome to drop a comment below. I'll be happy to get back to you guys after the show as well. And then even leading up to the event, just hit me up on Twitter, hit me up on the IG, wherever you guys want to hit me up. I'd be more than happy to answer all of your questions. But yeah, that's going to be the new direction of the show. I hope you guys enjoy it, and I can't wait to get into it. So what are we waiting for? Let's get into it. So my lock of the night play, that's what I'm going to start off with. It's the main event. It's Curtis Blaydes, 9,400, more than deserving of that price tag in my opinion, given his approach in his fights. The guy wants to take you down, and he wants to pummel your head through the canvas. And in doing so, he usually racks up a lot of points. Now, in his last fight against Alexander Volkov, he didn't finish Volkov, but he still managed to accrue 172.8 DraftKings points, taking that fight all 5 rounds. It looked like he was a little bit gassed at the latter end of that fight, end of round 4, round 5. He was really huffing and puffing. Alexander Volkov was really making him work, even though Volkov was on his back for the majority of that fight. That's Blaydes' MO though. The guy is a wrestler, and he's not going to stray too far from that. Even in his Junior Dos Santos fight, the fight before that, we saw him shooting the takedowns. We saw him feinting the takedowns, and he was doing it enough that it got Junior Dos Santos kind of biting on those feints. And that's where Curtis Blaydes was able to unload a beautiful combination, drops JDS and just follows up with the punches and gets the finish in that fight. But more often than not, you're going to see the Justin Willis approach, the Shamil Abdurrahimov approach, and the Alexander Volkov approach, which is take you down and just not let you breathe, just smother you as much as possible. Now, Curtis Blaydes is 30 years old, so he's continuously getting better. I think this is the best we've ever seen him at this point. And he's 14-2. His 2 losses are to Francis Ngannou, and most people already know him as the guy that if he touches you on the chin, more than likely you're going to sleep. Now, the first time they were scheduled to fight each other, or when they did fight each other, that fight got stopped because I believe it was Curtis Blaydes' eye that ended up closing. And if that fight had actually gone 3 full rounds, we probably would have saw Curtis Blaydes get his hand raised. Then they booked the rematch 5 fights ago for Curtis Blaydes, and Francis Ngannou still ends up touching the chin of Blaydes and puts him out. That's just Francis Ngannou for you. Not the greatest technical striker, not the greatest fighter, but he has probably the scariest power we've ever seen in the UFC. And unfortunately for Blaydes, he's lost to him now twice. But if he's not Francis Ngannou and cross from him, Curtis Blaydes is going to go out there and take him down, his opponent down time and time again until he gets the finish or gets his hand raised via decision. Now against Derek Lewis, we're getting probably the second hardest hitter in the division, maybe third if you want to throw Jairzinho Rozenstruik into the conversation. But Derek Lewis leads the UFC heavyweight division in most finishes, and it makes sense. The guy has a ton of power in his hands, but he's very slow and sloppy, and he comes down to his blitzes, and sometimes like his win over Alexander Volkov several fights ago, he's getting mauled for 14 minutes until he decides to say, fuck it, let's get up and start throwing some bungalows. And that's when he landed on Volkov and got the victory that way. He's always mustering up the energy later in fights when his opponents have been beating on him. It's like almost a Homer Simpson approach where he's just getting beat on, but he's so durable that he's able to survive and then possibly knock these guys out later or drop them and, score some rounds and pull off a decision victory. That's kind of his MO, but this is a very, very tough matchup here for Derek Lewis. You know what I mean? Curtis Blaydes will be able to get him down. We saw Derek Lewis get taken down pretty easily by Alexei Oleinik a couple times now, and Oleinik is old man Oleinik. We're talking about a 40-something-year-old guy in Oleinik who, is just muscling opponents down compared to Curtis Blaydes, who has a legitimate wrestling background and just, shoots double legs for lunch. It's just what he does. He can do it in his sleep if he wants to. So all Curtis Blaydes really needs to worry about is just staying away from the power of Derek Lewis. I think he'll be able to get him down within a minute, maybe 30 seconds of this fight starting, and I think we'll see him do some good damage from on top. Now, the difference with Derek Lewis surviving past opponents is that Curtis Blaydes is just another level. Like the last time we saw Derek Lewis fight a wrestler of Curtis Blaydes' level was Daniel Cormier, and we saw Cormier go out there and finish him via submission. I believe that fight ended in the second round. This is a much bigger guy in Curtis Blaydes who's going to be able to get you down and do some good damage from on top. We've seen, Blaydes, when he's able to get you down, he's able to do some big work from on top. You know what I mean? Just look back at the Alistair Overeem fight where he finished him via strikes from the guard. You don't often see fights finished from the guard, but he's able to generate so much power that not a lot of guys are able to do much from their back. With Derek Lewis, he just has that fuck it, let's get up type of game plan, right? With his jiu-jitsu, it's almost non-existent. The guy uses no technique. He kind of just, turns over to his stomach and then just starts getting back up. But I think he's going to have a hard time getting back up over and over again against a guy like Curtis Blaydes, who will be able to bring the damage down on Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis, a horrible gas tank as well too. He's only good for conserving his energy when he's on the ground and then getting back to his feet, throwing a blitz, maybe 5-6 strikes. And if he's not able to knock you out, then he's gonna get taken down again, and he's gonna continue to get smothered. And I think in this fight, he's going to get finished. I think Curtis Blaydes will finish him. I think he'll take him down repeatedly, like I said. And I think the sneaky prop that I'm also looking at here is Curtis Blaydes via submission plus 900. I think that's a solid spot. Curtis Blaydes is notoriously a ground and pounder, but Derek Lewis might be a little bit harder to put away, so he might have to put him to sleep. So that could be a possibility. But I got Curtis Blaydes winning this fight. I think he's going to score very, very high. I completely understand why he's the highest or the most expensive player or fighter on the field, because he will put up those numbers. And I just don't think that Derek Lewis is going to have much for him. So I got Blaydes. I'll probably say second or third round ground and pound or submission, but I think he's very live here. Next up, I got the dog of the night play, and I like Jared Gordon here at that 7,800 range. When he normally wins, he's winning in the hundreds. You know what I mean? Chris Fishgold, his last fight, 120 points. Dan Moret, 111 points. Hakron Diaz, he's scoring 110 points. But then obviously when he's losing, he's getting finished. But the difference here is Danny Chavez is not Diego Ferreira. Danny Chavez is not Joaquin Silva. Danny Chavez is definitely not Charles Do Bronx Oliveira. And that's my big thing here is I think a lot of people are just reading into the last fight of Danny Chavez where he was able to go out there and just completely, pick apart TJ Brown in that first round, really work that calf kick, which rendered TJ Brown pretty much compromised for the remainder of that fight. In the midway through the second round, we see TJ Brown go out there and say, oh, I can just move forward and this guy's probably going to crack. And that's what happened with Danny. You know what I mean? Danny's gas tank started to show like it wasn't the greatest. And when he was, fighting off of his back foot, he's just not as effective. And that's Jared Gordon's game. Jared Gordon goes out there and he pushes you backwards. He's a pressure fighter. He stays in your face. He throws, 150 strikes, lands, he's landed 200 strikes in a couple of his fights as well, too. The guy is just a machine that moves forward. Add into the fact that Jared Gordon has recently moved his camp down to Sanford MMA, we see massive improvements from him. And I feel like that's the perfect type of game or coaching that you're going to need a guy like Henry Hooft to kind of combat the calf kicking game of the MMA Masters team, which is where Danny Chavez comes from. You got guys like Miguel Baeza and Ricardo Lamas, guys that have come out from that camp that target the calf kick, and Danny Chavez is no different. However, I don't think that Danny is the level of a Miguel Baeza. You know what I mean? The guy's 33 years old. He's really got to make a run now, if at all. But Jared Gordon, on the other hand, has all the tools to make this a very grimy fight for Chavez. There's just not a lot of tape out there on Chavez. Outside of one fight he had 6 years ago in a fight where, won via split decision, but should have easily lost that fight. But we see what happens when grappling gets put into the equation. He kind of folds, he breaks. And I feel like that's what Jared Gordon will be able to do here against Danny Chavez. So I think a lot of people are just reading too far into that TJ Brown fight and thinking that, oh my God, this guy's a killer. But what happens when he's pushed right from the get-go and not just allowed to, settle into a fight? And I think that's what Jared Gordon's approach is going to be here, is he's just going to continuously move forward, not let Danny Chavez breathe, and, maybe finish him late, but I'm going to say he wins via decision, but he's going to get a ton of points in doing so. So I'm expecting this 7,800 priced fighter in Jared Gordon to score over 100 points here and win this fight via decision. Next up, we got the fade of the night, and this one was relatively easy. I had to go with Drakkar Klose. He's at 9,000 points. He's a minus 170 favorite here against Luis Pena, who, is just an underachiever at this point in time. Maybe Pena still has the potential to go out there and round out his game, because I truly think that he has a high ceiling once he's really able to get his game going. Moved his camp down to ATT. I think that's a great move for him, but that Kama Worthy fight just leaves such a bad taste in my mouth. The guy, the first round just did not go for the takedown at all. He gave up that first round. Second round, you see him successful with it, not able to get the submission victory. But then in the third round, you see him a little bit too desperate and leaves his neck out there, and we see Kama Worthy pull out that guillotine choke victory. Now, even the Matt Favola fight, very, very underachieving for Luis Pena. You know what I mean? A lot of people were very, very high on him. He's only 27 years old, so I think he still has a lot of improving to do. But Jakar Close is such an efficient fighter, and that's the issue here. That like he's so efficient to the point that he just fights to his opponent's level and just fights so close. And I mean no pun by that. Like he just all of his fights are very, very close. Like his last 3 wins, he scores 98 points, then 57 points against Bobby Green, 66 points against Lando Venata. And even when he's in these close fights, like his opponents are not scoring that high either. You know, I mean, even David Tamor, when he beat him, only scored 61 points. Benio Dariush obviously finished him in the second round, but more often than not, Jakar Close has a pretty solid chin and he's very durable. So I think that Benio Dariush fight was a bit of an anomaly. Like he thought he rocked Benio Dariush, then they go into this firefight, probably one of the craziest sequences we ever saw in 2020. And unfortunately for him, he's the one, staring up at the lights, and he got knocked out in that second round. But he slows fights down, and I think that's what's going to happen here against Pena. Is that this is going to be a slow paced fight, maybe some grappling, a couple leg kicks here and there from Jakar Close, a couple efficient combinations, but nothing that's going to score in the hundreds. I'd be surprised if maybe Pena would be live for a finish here, but if this fight does go to decision, I highly doubt we see either guy scoring the hundreds here. So easily, Jakar Close at 9,000 is a fade for me. I'm probably not going to have much of him on any of my lineups. He doesn't have much upside for finishing. He's a decision machine, and even in his fight against Christos Giagos, where he got 98 points, I don't think he's going to be able to put that type of performance against a Luis Pena here, who, we're talking about a 6-inch height advantage. We're talking about a 5-inch reach advantage for Luis Pena. Now, Jakar Close is experienced, and I do think that he'll be able to overcome that, but I think it's just going to be too close of a fight to warrant a $9,000 price tag on a guy like Jakar Close. So there's much better guys in the 9,000 range or a higher 8,000 range that will score much better than Jakar, which is why he's my fade of the night for this card. Sleeper of the night. This one was a little bit harder to choose. I ended up going with Darrick Minner, and I'm picking Charles Rosa to win this fight, but I think the upside on Darrick Minner is very, very high. We're talking about a guy that has over 36 fights, coming into his 37th fight now. He has 25 victories. Get this, 22 of those 25 victories have come via submission. I believe 21 of those came within the first round. Like, the guy goes for it in round one, and there's no doubt about it. So if there's one guy that you can kind of rely on to fight for your money in that round one and try to cash that round one bonus for you, it's a guy like Darrick Minner. Now he's going up against another black belt in jiu-jitsu, and Charles Rosa, who was able to fend off Bryce Mitchell for the entirety of 15 minutes in a lot of close submission attempts from Bryce Mitchell. So I think it might be a little bit of a harder task for Darrick Minner to get it done. But if he does, it's going to be in the first round. I think this is a fight that you're going to want a little bit of both sides. But I think that Minner might be the sleeper side here, as people will be higher on Charles Rosa, who's currently at minus 185. I was thinking of making Andrei Arlovsky the sleeper play of the night, because I do think that he's going to be very low owned, but I think he has a very solid chance of winning the fight as well too against Tom Aspinall. My concern though is that Arlovsky, when he wins, he's very low scoring, right? He's like 45 points, 50 points, whereas Darrick Minner, if he wins, he's going to win in that first round, and he's going to get you a solid a total as well too. So I think that he's a solid sleeper of the night play. You don't want to be too overexposed, as I do think that Charles Rosa's jiu-jitsu defense is pretty good. But if any guy was going to catch him, it would be Darrick Minner, given his style, his kamikaze style, which is go all out in that first round. And if he's not able to get you out of there, more than likely he's going to be the one that gets taken out in that second round. But I'd have to go with Minner as my sleeper play of the night. Out of the 4 shows that I've done on this channel so far, this has been the toughest card for me in terms of finding a sleeper of the night play. So I had to settle with Darrick Minner. Might be slightly more owned than I think, but as a dog and somebody at that 7,400 range, I think that he's a solid spot to potentially, score very, very high, especially if he gets that first round submission victory, as history has said, given his record. It's absolutely crazy. All right, Stacakble main event or not? I don't think it is. If Derek Lewis wins, it's probably going to be a quick KO. if actually, you know what? No, I take that back. Lewis, like I said, he does have that ability to sometimes just gather up strength later in a fight, in round 3, round 4, and go berserk and get a knockout. So maybe Curtis Blaydes goes out there and gets a ton of points off of 3 rounds of work, and then Derek Lewis gets a late finish. I'd be very low on the Stacakble side here. Again, if this goes to Curtis Blaydes' plan, you're going to get a very, very low score out of Derek Lewis here. I don't see it going 5 rounds. I think Blaydes finishes this inside the distance, and we're not going to get a ton of control time from Derek Lewis. We're not going to get a ton of significant strikes. All you're banking on is him getting the knockout, and I think that's a very low percentage here. So ultimately, I'll say that this is not a Stacakble main event. All right, my favorite plays in each range will go in the 6,000 round. We only got 2 guys, which is we got Yannick. Well, not 2 guys. We got 2 fighters. Yana Kunitskaya at 6,900 and Derek Lewis at 6,800. I think Derek Lewis, if he wins, would be the higher upside. Yana Kunitskaya, I don't see her being able to implement her game, which recently has just been like bullying girls up against the cage, getting a ton of control time. She's not going to be able to do that to Ketlin. So I think the higher upside here in the 6,000 range would be Derek Lewis. In the 7,000 range, my dog of the night, Jared Gordon. I got to go with him. I think he's going to score it in the hundreds. I think he's going to pull off the upside here. And I think he's going to stun a lot of people who are thinking that Chavez would just go in there, leg kick his way to victory, and get the W. I think that Jared Gordon takes him down time and time again, puts the pressure on him, maybe finishes him late, but definitely scores up in the hundreds, even if this fight goes to a decision. So he's my favorite play in the 7,000s. Favorite play in the 8,000s, Chris Daukaus. He's coming in at 8,600. I like him in the spot. I think he's a very solid fighter, showing improvements on a fight-to-fight basis, and not to mention trimming the hell down. Just 3 fights ago, he was weighing in at like 256, comes into the UFC at 244, and now his last fight, his second fight in the UFC, is at like 220. And it's definitely working for him in terms of his speed, his boxing, and it's definitely showing off as he's been able to knock out his last 2 opponents in the UFC. So I think we'll be able to see him go out there, stay on his bike enough, but get his hands going that he'll eventually knock out Alexei Oleinik, and I expect that to happen in the first round, which is why I think that 8,600 for Chris Daukaus is very, very reasonable, as I do expect him to get Oleinik out of there in that first round. So he's my favorite play at 8,000. And then lastly, in the 9,000s, my lock of the night play, Curtis Blaydes. I think he scores very, very high, takes down Derek Lewis at will, and then eventually finishes him either with some ground and pound or via submission, but easily my favorite play at the 9,000 mark. All right, let's get into the monkey knife fight tips. We went 1-1 last week. I believe it was Ricky Simon that just missed the mark by 3 significant strikes. Diego Lima kills it, I believe, by 20 or so strikes, cashes that over. But this week, I got 2 less thans. So I got Oleinik less than 25.5 strikes. I expect him to, 1, get knocked out. That's primary, but secondly, if he gets this fight to the ground, which is his realm, he's going to be seeking submissions. He's not going to be seeking significant strikes. So under less than 25.5 significant strikes, I think is a great spot. And then lastly, Phil Hawes, less than 44.5 strikes. I think that's a solid spot as well too. I think he's going to go berserk in that first round. If he doesn't get that knockout, it's going to get tough for him because his cardio is not that great. And then we'll see Imavov really take away or pull away with this fight in the second and third rounds. And we won't see that many significant strikes land for Mr. Phil Hawes. So yeah, that's pretty much a wrap on the show. And it feels weird because it's a little bit quicker than normal. But once again, if you guys want the full in-depth breakdown of the card, check out my podcast. The link is in the description below for my YouTube channel. I go over the entire 15 card slate, and I hope to give you guys even more in-depth breakdowns on that side of things. But in terms of DraftKings, I just want to give you guys these plays here. I think they're solid spots. Hopefully at least 2 or 3 of them come to fruition for you guys, and we're able to take down some of these tournaments or some of these head-to-heads. Apparently, I've been getting a lot of good recognition over the last 3 episodes, so I'm hoping to keep that streak going. And shout out to you guys for supporting your boy on a week-to-week basis. All right, again, you guys can find me at MMALOTN on Twitter, MMALOTN on the IG, and then on the YouTube as well, MMALOTN, and then obviously my Patreon. Everything is in the description below. Make sure you guys check out Sal's MMA Patreon as well too. He has a bunch of tools for you there as well, projections, just a lot of tools that will help you cash on this weekend. So make sure you guys check that stuff out. If you haven't already, make sure you guys hit that subscribe, hit that like as well too. Show your boy some love and turn on those notifications so you guys know whenever Sal's going live or whenever I'm going live for this channel as well too, because we will be doing more live streams in the very near future, near future, and I can't wait to do that for you guys. All right. That's pretty much it on my end. Good luck on your bets this week, and I'll see you guys next week.